Life is a curious dance, isn't it? We move to rhythms we don't always understand, guided by forces unseen and rules we often inherit without question. But sometimes there are moments of awakening, rare, powerful moments when you stumble upon a truth so profound it becomes a rule you live by. And those rules, they can change everything. Not all rules are born of the world. Some are born of the soul, carved out of triumphs, mistakes, and everything in between. I'm here to share with you not just a story, but the essence of 3 rules that shifted the very axis of my existence. There was a time in my life when I was walking through days like a ghost. I existed, yes, but I wasn't living. I was floating from one task to the next, one moment to the next, as though my spirit had packed its bags and left me to fend for myself. You know that feeling, don't you? When your dreams seem like distant echoes, and you wonder if your voice, your true voice, will ever find its way back to you. But then something happened. Something small, almost imperceptible. A whisper of realization, a flicker of light in the shadows. It wasn't a grand revelation, no, it was a seed that grew into 3 rules, 3 truths that reshaped my very foundation. They didn't come all at once, and they weren't handed to me like some precious gift wrapped in silk. No, I fought for them, I bled for them, and once I found them, I knew they were mine. The first rule came to me on a day that started like any other. I was caught in the grind, drowning in the noise of obligation and expectation. And then, as if the universe had grown tired of my blindness, I heard it. A voice, not from the world outside, but from within me, saying, if you don't love yourself, no one else will do it for you. That's what I needed to hear. And so thirsty of soul that I asked within me, saying, if you don't love yourself, no one else will do it for you. At first, I resisted it. Love myself? How could I when I was so well acquainted with my flaws, my failures? But that voice didn't waver. It didn't shout or demand. It simply waited. And so I began. It was clumsy at first, like trying to learn a new language. I spoke kindly to myself in the mirror, even when the reflection didn't deserve it. I allowed myself to rest when the world said I should push harder. Little by little, I learned that self-love isn't an act of indulgence, it's an act of survival. It is the root from which all other loves grow. You cannot give from an empty cup. You cannot thrive with a heart parched of its own affection. The second rule came wrapped in pain. Isn't it strange how pain has a way of revealing truths we'd rather not see? I had given so much of myself to people who saw me as nothing more than a convenience. I had poured my time, my energy, my soul into relationships that drained me until I was a husk of who I used to be. And then one day, as I sat alone, staring at the remnants of another shattered connection, it hit me. The voice returned, steady as ever, and it whispered, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow. This rule was a storm. It uprooted everything I thought I knew about boundaries, about worth. I realized that every time I stayed silent in the face of disrespect, I was complicit in my own devaluation. Every time I made excuses for someone's neglect, I was telling them it was acceptable. That day, I made a promise to myself. I would teach the world how to treat me. I would set the standard, and I would not apologize for it. And let me tell you, the moment you claim your worth, the world begins to notice. Not everyone will stay, but those who do will honor the rules you've set for yourself. The third rule was the hardest to learn because it required me to confront something I had spent my whole life avoiding. Fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. It was always there, lurking in the shadows, whispering that I wasn't enough. For years, I let it dictate my choices, my dreams. But one day, as I stood on the precipice of yet another opportunity I was too afraid to seize, I heard the voice again. Only this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a roar. "Do it scared," it said. "Do it anyway." So I did. I took the leap. I spoke the words. I wrote the story. I stepped into spaces I didn't feel ready for, didn't feel worthy of. And you know what I discovered? Fear doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes fuel, a fire that propels you forward. The key is not to wait for courage, but to move despite the fear. And when you do, you find that the very thing you were afraid of is often the thing that sets you free. These 3 rules: love yourself, teach the world how to treat you, and do it scared, became my compass. They didn't erase the struggles or smooth out the jagged edges of life, but they gave me a way to navigate them. They reminded me that strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about knowing how to rebuild yourself again and again from the pieces. There's a kind of magic in living by your own rules, a kind of power that no one can take from you. These rules are not just lessons. They are declarations, affirmations of who you are and who you are becoming. They are the rhythm to which I now dance, the melody that carries me forward, even on the darkest days. And as I share them with you, I hope they find a home in your heart, just as they found one in mine. It's easy to talk about rules, isn't it? Easy to write them down neat and clean on paper, as if life itself will fall into place like a well-ordered list. But the truth about rules, the kind that truly matter, is that they demand something from you. They ask for change. They insist on discomfort. They hold up a mirror to every excuse, every fear, every shadow you've tried to ignore. And if you're brave enough to meet their gaze, they will show you who you truly are. I wasn't always brave. For a long time, I let life happen to me instead of for me. I was a spectator, watching from the sidelines, too scared to step into the chaos, too hesitant to claim my place. I was waiting for permission that would never come, for someone to tell me, it's your turn. It's your time. But life doesn't work that way, does it? It doesn't hand you an invitation to greatness. It doesn't lay out a red carpet and say, here you go, walk this way. No, life waits for you to make the first move. Or the rules I discovered didn't just change my life. They demanded that I live it differently. And let me tell you, the journey wasn't easy. It was messy and raw and filled with moments that made me want to turn back. But that's the thing about rules born from the soul. They won't let you go once you've found them. You can't get around them. They built the earth and the sky as something to appreciate, as one that gives life objective, that changes things like the weather, clouds, or the earth, and the virgin. And they take the first rule, loving yourself. It sounds simple, almost cliche. Love yourself. How many times have we heard those words tossed around like confetti at a celebration? But loving yourself is not a celebration. It's a revolution. It's waking up every day and choosing to see beauty in the scars, strength in the struggles, and worth in the very act of being. It's forgiving yourself for the mistakes you made when you didn't know better, and giving yourself permission to grow beyond them. If giving yourself permission to grow beyond them. There were days when I stood in front of the mirror and could barely meet my own eyes. Days when the weight of self-doubt pressed so heavily on my chest that I thought it might break me. But I learned that loving yourself isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about being present with yourself, even on the days when you feel unworthy, and reminding yourself that worthiness isn't something you earn. It's something you already have. And then there's the second rule, teaching the world how to treat you. This one was a battle. Because to teach the world how to treat you, you first have to believe you deserve to be treated well. You have to believe in your own value, your own dignity, even when others try to convince you otherwise. And that belief, it doesn't come easily. I remember a time when I let people walk over me because I was too afraid to lose them. I thought that if I set boundaries, if I said this is not okay, they would leave, and some of them did. But what I learned was that their leaving wasn't a loss, it was a clearing. It was making space for people who saw me, who respected me, who cherished me. Setting boundaries isn't about pushing people away, it's about drawing the right people closer. Boundaries are an act of love, not just for yourself, but for everyone in your life. They create clarity, honesty, and mutual respect. And yes, they're uncomfortable at first. Saying no when you're used to saying yes feels like stepping onto unfamiliar ground. But that discomfort is where growth happens. It's where you reclaim your power. The third rule, doing it scared, was the rule that turned my fear into my ally. Fear used to be my greatest enemy. It would show up uninvited, whispering in my ear, reminding me of all the ways I might fail. And I listened to it. For years, I let fear dictate my choices. Keep me small, keep me safe. But the truth is, safety isn't always where life is. Life is in the risk. It's in the leap. It's in the moments when your heart is pounding and your hands are shaking and you do the thing anyway. I remember the first time I stood on a stage to speak my truth. My knees were trembling, my voice quivered, and I could feel the weight of every eye in the room. But I spoke. I let the words pour out of me raw and unfiltered, and when I finished, the silence was deafening. For a moment, I thought I had failed. But then the applause came, and with it the realization that fear had not defeated me, it had fueled me. Doing it scared doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means you won't let fear stop you. It means understanding that fear is not a wall, it's a doorway. And every time you step through it, you become stronger, braver, more alive. These rules are not static. They evolve with you. They deepen as you grow, revealing new layers of truth, new opportunities for transformation. They are not a destination, but a journey, a lifelong commitment to becoming the fullest, most authentic version of yourself. Unfortunately, there were times when I faltered, when I questioned whether these rules were worth the effort. But every time I returned to them, they reminded me of who I am. They reminded me that life is not about waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect circumstances. It's about creating your own moments, your own path, your own rules. This is how you make the mistakes of our children, the mistakes of my grandchildren, the mistakes of... And here's the thing. These rules are not just mine, they are universal. They belong to anyone who is willing to claim them, to live by them, to let them shape their life. Because the truth is, we all have the power to change our story. We all have the power to choose a different rhythm, a different dance. And that dance is and will always be the one we make. Of whether we make it. I've seen these rules transform not just my life, but the lives of those around me. I've watched people rise from the ashes of their own despair, fueled by the simple but profound act of loving themselves. I've witnessed the strength that comes from setting boundaries, from teaching the world to treat you with the respect you deserve. And I've felt the exhilaration of watching someone step into their fear and discover the freedom on the other side. Life is not a straight line. It is a series of twists and turns, highs and lows, moments of clarity and moments of chaos. But within that chaos, within those twists and turns, there is always a choice to live by rules that empower you, that guide you, that bring you closer to the person you were meant to be. So I invite you to consider this. What rules are you living by? Are they rules that were handed to you, rules that no longer serve you? Or are they rules born of your own truth, your own journey, your own soul? Because the rules you choose to live by will shape the life you create, and the life you create will be your legacy. The hardest part about living by these kinds of rules is that they demand honesty, brutal, unrelenting honesty, not just with the world, but with yourself. You have to face the parts of yourself you've tried to hide, the parts you've been too scared to confront. And that kind of honesty is like standing in the middle of a storm, stripped bare, with no shelter to shield you. It's terrifying, yes, but it's also liberating. Just one word, but it echoed through every corner of my being. Enough of the lies, enough of the settling, enough of living small. And from that moment on, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer hide from my own truth. But here's the thing about truth. It's not always easy to hold. Sometimes it's heavy. Sometimes it demands that you let go of things you thought you couldn't live without. Sometimes it forces you to walk away from people, places, and situations that no longer align with who you are. And that's painful. It's lonely, but it's also necessary. Because every time you let go of something that isn't meant for you, you make space for something that is. Living by these rules taught me that life isn't about fitting into the molds that others create for you. It's about breaking those molds, smashing them to pieces, and building something entirely your own. It's about understanding that you are not defined by your past, by your mistakes, or by the labels the world tries to place on you. You are defined by the choices you make, the values you hold, and the way you show up for yourself and others. Living the way Jesus lived and showing up for yourself, that's a radical act. It's choosing to be present in your own life, to take ownership of your story, and to live with intention. It's waking up every day and saying, "This is my life, and I will live it fully, unapologetically, and on my own terms." I've often been asked how I found the strength to live this way, to commit to these rules when it would have been so much easier to stay in the comfort of the familiar. And the truth is, the strength didn't come from outside of me. It came from the moments when I was at my weakest, when I was forced to dig deep and find something within myself that I didn't even know was there. There was a time when I thought strength meant never falling, never failing, never showing vulnerability. But now I know that true strength is found in the fall. It's found in the moments when you feel broken, when the weight of the world threatens to crush you, and you still find a way to rise. It's not about being unshakable. It's about being unbreakable in your spirit, in your resolve, in your commitment to yourself. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is that these rules don't just change your life, they ripple out into the lives of those around you. When you love yourself, you inspire others to do the same. When you set boundaries, you show others that it's possible to live with integrity and self-respect. And when you face your fears and do it scared, you give others permission to step into their own courage. We are all connected in ways we often don't realize. Our energy, our choices, our actions, they create waves that touch the lives of people we may never meet. And so living by these rules isn't just about changing your own life. It's about contributing to a collective shift, a collective awakening. But I'll be honest with you, there are days when I forget, days when the noise of the world drowns out the voice within me, days when fear whispers louder than courage, when doubt creeps in and tries to convince me that I'm not enough. And on those days, I return to the rules. I remind myself of the promises I made, of the journey I've walked, and of the person I am becoming. Because living by these rules isn't about perfection. It's not about getting it right every single time. It's about persistence. It's about showing up even when it's hard, even when it's hard. It's about choosing to try again, even when you've fallen. There's a kind of beauty in imperfection, in the messiness of life. It's in the cracks, in the flaws, in the moments when everything feels uncertain and yet you keep moving forward. It's in the resilience of the human spirit, in our ability to adapt, to grow, to transform. And transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a journey. It's the small, quiet moments of choosing yourself over and over again. It's the daily practice of living in alignment with your values, your truth, your soul. Sometimes people ask me if I ever get tired of living by these rules, if I ever wish I could go back to the way things were before. And my answer is always the same. I don't miss the person I was before, because that person was surviving, not thriving. That person was playing small, hiding her light, afraid to take up space in the world. But now I am alive. Now I am free. And freedom is not about having no restrictions. It's about choosing the restrictions that align with your highest self. It's about living in a way that honors your truth, your values, your purpose. These rules, loving yourself, teaching the world how to treat you, and doing it scared, are not just guidelines. They are a way of being, a way of living that transforms everything it touches. They are an invitation to step into your power, to reclaim your voice, and to create a life that is truly your own. Every day, I am reminded that life is not promised. Every breath, every moment, every sunrise is a gift. And with that gift comes a responsibility to live fully, to love deeply, to create meaning in the time we have. So I wake up each morning and return to the rules. I anchor myself in their truth, their wisdom, their power. I let them guide me, challenge me, stretch me, and in doing so, I continue to grow, to evolve, to become the person I was always meant to be. The journey is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Because in the end, what matters most is not the challenges we face, but how we rise to meet them. It's not the fears we feel, but the courage we find to move forward anyway. It's not the mistakes we make, but the lessons we learn and the strength we gain from them. And so I live by these rules, not because they are easy, but because they are true, because they remind me of the person I am and the person I am becoming, because they give me the strength to keep going, even when the path is unclear, and because they have taught me that life, in all its messiness and beauty, is a gift worth cherishing, a journey worth taking, a story worth telling. And what a story it is. A story filled with twists and turns, with moments of doubt that turned into clarity, with losses that gave way to the most profound gains. A story of standing at the edge of what felt like insurmountable fear and stepping forward anyway, one trembling foot at a time. Because in the end, the act of stepping forward is what life is made of. Not grand gestures or monumental decisions, but those quiet, personal choices that no one else sees. The ones that say, today I choose me, today I choose courage. And that would be what this film is all about. It is my great passion to see more great people, both in sports. The beauty of these rules is that they are not confined to one person's experience. They are universal in their simplicity, yet profoundly personal in how they manifest. Loving yourself looks different for everyone. For some, it's about carving out space in a chaotic life to rest and breathe. For others, it's about chasing dreams that once seemed impossible. Teaching the world how to treat you might mean walking away from toxic relationships. Or it might mean finding the courage to say, I deserve better. And doing it scared, that is a deeply individual battle, where fear meets resolve and resolve wins. And even in their individuality, these rules bind us together. They remind us that we are all walking a path filled with uncertainties, each of us grappling with fears and doubts. And yet, within that shared vulnerability lies a shared strength, the strength to rise, to love, to create, and to live. Because living by these rules is not just a way to survive, it's a way to thrive. It's a way to step into the fullness of who you are and who you are becoming with every breath, every choice, and every step forward. There's something about the act of choosing yourself that feels like rebellion, doesn't it? In a world that so often tells us to shrink, to fit, to conform, standing tall and saying, I am enough just as I am, feels like a revolutionary act. And yet it is perhaps the most natural thing we can do. We are born whole, untouched by the expectations and judgments of the world. Somewhere along the way, though, we forget. We let the weight of other people's opinions press us into shapes that don't belong to us. We let fear tell us what we can and cannot do. But the beauty of life is that it always offers a chance to remember, to rediscover the truth we were born with, that we are enough, that we are capable, that we are worthy of love and joy and all the good things life has to offer. It's not always easy to embrace that truth. There are days when doubt creeps in like a shadow, whispering lies that feel too loud to ignore. But even on those days, the rules remain steadfast and unchanging, ready to guide us back to ourselves. When I look back on the moments that shaped me, they weren't the easy ones. They were the moments of pain, of struggle, of uncertainty. They were the times when I thought I couldn't take another step, and yet somehow I did. Because the rules weren't just a guide, they were a lifeline. They reminded me that loving myself wasn't selfish, that setting boundaries wasn't cruel, that facing fear wasn't reckless. They reminded me that I was stronger than I knew, braver than I felt, and more resilient than I ever imagined. Living this way doesn't mean the fear goes away. It doesn't mean the challenges stop coming or that life suddenly becomes simple. But it does mean that you face it all differently. You face it with a deep, unshakable knowing that no matter what comes your way, you have the tools to navigate it. You have the power to choose how you respond, how you grow, how you rise. And rising isn't always a dramatic, sweeping motion. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like taking a deep breath and showing up for another day. Sometimes it's the small, almost invisible choices that lead to the biggest transformations. Saying no when you mean no, saying yes when you mean yes, choosing to believe in yourself even when the world gives you every reason not to. The beauty of life lies in its imperfection, in its ability to challenge, surprise, and transform us when we least expect it. The journey isn't about erasing fear or escaping mistakes. It's about embracing them as part of our evolution. The rules I've shared, loving yourself, teaching the world how to treat you, and doing it scared, are not magical solutions, but powerful foundations. They demand courage, resilience, and an unrelenting commitment to your growth. Living by these rules is a choice, one that calls you to step into your light even when shadows threaten to pull you back. It's about claiming the life you deserve, the love you are worthy of, and the dreams you are brave enough to chase. The rules are simple, but the results are extraordinary. They are your compass in a world full of noise, guiding you back to yourself every single time.